Hi everybody, today I'm going to cover revisiting the Bitcoin Supercycle. I came up with this theory a couple years ago, and now I'm going to revisit, is the supercycle happening? What are the different metrics that might qualify it? Before we begin, a little advertisement from one of my sponsors, CryptoTag. These are titanium plates that you store your Bitcoin backup on. So they have these little digits right here, and you use a little etcher where you etch inside these. So to store your Bitcoin backup, this is the best place to put it on. It's fireproof, waterproof, crush proof. Highly recommend it. Use it myself. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. So I write this article every Thursday. On Thursday, it comes out to my paid subscribers, and then I release it later on YouTube. So a little bit of background. Most readers will remember my popular article, The Bitcoin Supercycle, that I wrote in December 2020, but I actually wrote it originally, or mentioned the supercycle originally, all the way back in 2019. And here's the tweet that I have where I talk about how the next bull run might be a super cycle. And folks often ask me, Dan, what signs are we looking for? So I'm going to go ahead and revisit my old theories and see how we're tracking along. Well, Bitcoin was planted during the 2008 financial crisis as an antidote to bad central banking policy, but it had largely grown during a macro bull run. That means the mainstream markets. There were no depressions or recessions from 2008 to 2020. I'm speaking very generally. Of course, there's like a little pockets here and there, but not a global one. Every 7 to 10 years, we typically experience a short-term debt cycle in the macro markets. Now, Bitcoin has its own little cycles, which are tied with the halvings. You've probably heard about Bitcoin in 2013, 2017, when friends and family were talking about the wild swings in price. Well, some hypothesize that that 4-year cycle is actually induced by the halving. What happens in the halving is that there is a reduction in supply because the newly minted Bitcoins drops. And due to that, plus an increase in demand, makes the price go up. This is what we call Bitcoin's viral marketing loop. And Satoshi describes it succinctly. As the number of users grows, the value per coin increases. It has the potential for a positive feedback loop. As users increase, the value goes up, which could attract more users to take advantage of the increasing value. Now, Satoshi wrote this before Bitcoin was worth a penny, which is wild. And in the chart below, we have Bitcoin's price with the halvings being the dotted lines. Now, as you can see, there's been a bull run after every single halving, and we're in one right now. And by the way, this is pulled from, you can pull this from, this is the TradingView. TradingView has really cool charting software. Definitely recommend you check it out. So Bitcoin's 4-year cycles, these microcycles, are now coinciding with a longer 10-year cycle, which puts Bitcoin in a potential super cycle. Ray Dalio has got a similar observation of short and long-term debt cycles. As you can see, these little miniature cycles, and then there's a big cycle that happens over a much longer time period. So when COVID came, the markets plunged. While Bitcoin eventually recovered, governments across the world engaged in unprecedented money printing. And this shit was crazy. Central banks printed $25 trillion. That's right, $25 trillion. And, this meant that governments were actively devaluing the currency, and that's exactly what Bitcoin is built to protect against. Bitcoin is a special purpose built to be a store of value where you don't have to trust your bank or government. And these moments don't come around too often, right? You don't distrust your government when things are going well. You start to distrust them when things are going poorly. And that the 2008 financial crisis definitely brought that into focus. There's no stopping this money printing machine. We even have the U.S. undergoing a 4th round of stimulus. Well, why not 5, 6, or 10? Why not just keep printing for forever? And I think that's what we're going to see here is that the money printing operation is just going to keep going and going. And so this was a big signal of the super cycle that there was a big recession while Bitcoin is having a bull run, which brings Bitcoin's value into focus. Now, the next big section here is about the institutions, and they were brought in because of this increased focus. So the institutions are finally here. There was a meme back in 2017 that the institutions are coming. The institutions are here now. And back when last time I wrote about the super cycle, hedge funds and investment banks had just started to buy Bitcoin in 2020 and Q4 2020. This was reflected in Coinbase's quarterly financials, as we can see the dark blue and the dark blue vertical bar here. That represents the amount of institutional revenue generated. And we can actually go check this out. You can check out their quarterly financials if you go to their website. So The tide is completely shifted on the institutional front. Now, hedge funds, investment banks, and fintechs are all piling in. I wrote about this in my institutional adoption of Bitcoin piece. You can check that out. I'll include it in the links below. And this hilarious collage shows the transition from skeptics to advocates. I mean, JP Morgan is the most hilarious one. Bitcoin is a fraud that will blow up, says JP Morgan boss. Later, JP Morgan says investors could make Bitcoin 1% of portfolios. Just the hypocrisy before of them just not believing in something new and innovative, and then the juxtaposition with what they say now is really funny and really transparent. And since the end of last year, though, since the last time I wrote about the supercycle, we saw institutional narrative snowball even more when Tesla decided to buy Bitcoin. This was huge. So Tesla bought $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. That's a massive amount. And Elon Musk publicly came out and said he's a big fan of Bitcoin. This was a huge checkmark for the supercycle theory, and I honestly didn't think it would happen for another microcycle. And while it takes time for these corporates to disclose their Bitcoin positions, there's a lot of internal stakeholder buy-in, aka getting everyone on board. And then later on they have to report it, but that takes time. With Genesis's quarterly report on lending and borrowing, they also have an OTC desk, and they saw volume from corporates increase to over 25% of their total activity. Much of this surge was attributable to a mix of clients taking positions in Bitcoin for the first time. That's a lot of money. That's a big sign that the corporates, as part of the institutions, they're coming in now, and they have a ton of money with them. Over the next few months, we'll see these come out, and I think that's going to be really, really crazy and really, really big check mark for the super cycle. Now, without institutions, Bitcoin would have been relegated to a very niche asset class and held by individuals who have little influence over global finance and politics. And this is an important transition in Bitcoin's adoption curve as it becomes more widely recognized as a store of value. It becomes further ingrained in our world. Institutions coming into Bitcoin legitimizes it for retail traders who then pile in. A lot of your family members, friends, they might not believe in Bitcoin yet, but as soon as these institutions say it's safe, they're going to start buying. So that's going to be really, really killer. Another promoted slot here, CryptoTag, again, one of the best tools you can use to store and protect your Bitcoin. Go to their website, check it out. It'll be in the link below. They even shoot it, which is wild. So go check out. They've got videos of them torturing this device. This device would protect your Bitcoin backup. That's the 12 to 24 words that you write down. And to kind of finish up the whole story here, there's finally Bitcoin has a singular narrative. In 2017, there were many competing narratives to Bitcoin's Gold 2.0. Many of you probably remember the ICOs. And Bitcoin was also fighting a Confederate fork, Bitcoin Cash, which felt that Bitcoin's purpose was to be a cheap PayPal. That was a really popular narrative back then. Both the dApp platform and cheap PayPal narratives have kind of faded away a bit. Bitcoin's Gold 2.0 narrative really shines, and that's what's driving the crypto space forward. It's the largest focal point, and that's going to accrue a bunch of demand. And back in the day of 2013 and 2017, the last two bull runs, there was very little content to help newcomers understand Bitcoin and for existing Bitcoiners to maintain the faith. But after the 2017 bull run, there was a ton of new content that came in. This is actually when I started to write. And finally, one of the last check marks in the super cycle is the ease of use. 2013, 2017, really hard to buy Bitcoin. You had to wire it in, understand how an order book works. Now you can buy it with PayPal, Robinhood, Cash App, SoFi. It's so easy. This Bitcoin cycle is different. That's why this is a super cycle. Bitcoin was made for this moment. Never before in history have we seen such a strong fundamentals. Has Bitcoin had such strong fundamentals against a macro backdrop that highlights why Bitcoin's needed? The narrative is singular, and the ability for global value to flow into Bitcoin has never been easier through the rise of institutional adoption. What happens when Bitcoin moves from 0.01% ownership to 1% in the world? This is going to be huge. It's not going to go from 100,000 to 300,000. It could blast right past that or have a more mild bear market. In other words, that's the super cycle. I hope everyone enjoyed. Really, really fun digging in on this. I don't think this is highly probable. I think it's a possible super cycle just due to this time being so different. Again, I'm not saying that this is going to happen. In fact, I think it's a lower likelihood, but it could. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers.